My grandchildren were at our house, and Santa came around in the back of a trailer with Mrs. Santa. Our grandchildren were waved and yelled, and they got a little bag of candy. The story's told about a Christian by the name of Nicholas, who was very kind, and he would often dress up and go give out gifts to poor children. Over time, people made up stories about him until eventually we got the jolly old elf living in the North Pole. All kinds of stories have been told about Santa Claus. The poet Clement Moore gave him a red nose and 8 tiny reindeer. Thomas Nast, the cartoonist, made him big and fat, gave him a red suit trimmed with fur. And of course, the cowboy singer Gene Autry, you all know what he did. Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer. But one line I've noticed a lot lately is one that tries to answer the question, how does one go about replacing Santa Claus if he decides to retire or if he decides to die? And one of the cleverest movies to explore that theme was the movie The Santa Claus. Tim Allen becomes Santa by mistake because he did not read the fine print. And he put on the Santa suit and thus bound himself to a legal contract known as the Santa Claus. And in one scene, Tim Allen, he's in the doctor's office and he's receiving a checkup. And he complains about all these changes that have taken place in his life. There were changes in his body fat and his facial hair. After he was shaved, the beard just pops back out again. He tries dyeing his gray hair black, only to have it change back again. And no matter how much he exercises, he could not get rid of his belly. There are also changes in his attitudes, and he finds himself going ho, ho, ho quite a bit. He finds how and where he lives changes. You see, once he put on that suit, his life was never the same. So how does all of that relate to us as Christians? Well, it relates to us as Christians in 3 ways. Because first of all, the Bible tells us to put on something. To put on Jesus. And once we put on Jesus, our lives are never the same. We become the children of God. And we have a new home. And we have a new set of relationships. And the Bible tells us that Jesus puts on us a white robe. The white robe that doesn't have a spot or doesn't have a blemish. And once we put on those clothes, our lives are never the same. When Tim Allen put on the Santa suit, it changed. It changed how he looked. It changed how he thought. It changed how he acted. It changed everything about him. And that's what should happen to us when we put on Jesus Christ. That single act should change the way that we look, and the way that we think, and the way that we act. Here's what it says in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 17 to 21. That you should no longer walk as the rest of the Gentiles walk, by being alienated from the life of God, because of the blindness of their heart, who have given themselves to lewdness, the work of uncleanness and greediness. And then in verses 22 to 24 it says that you were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. And Paul goes on to tell us that putting on Christ means that our behavior changes. In verses 25 to 27, it tells us to put off lying, that we should prefer the truth to lying, to not give place to the devil. Let no corrupt word come out of your mouth. We should prefer a G-rated way of talking, as opposed to surrounding ourselves with filthy language we find in the books and the TV programs and other forms of entertainment that surrounds us. It also says there that we're not to be angry and we're not to sin. That we should not allow anger to so overcome us that it destroys our relationships. and we're to give to those who are in need. That we should work with our hands, that we're to give to the poor rather than to looking for handouts. We need to be kind and compassionate to others. We need to forgive them just as God has forgiven us and Christ has forgiven us. So in short, when people are around us, they should be able to see what we've put on. They should be able to see Jesus Christ in us. And when we don't behave that way, people will sense that something isn't right. And we call it walking your talk. It's one thing to say that you're a Christian, but it's another thing to walk what you say. And back in 1999 in the Indianapolis Star, they carried a story about a department Santa Claus. And apparently a mother placed her 1.5-year-old child on Santa's lap. The child began to cry. The mother suggested that Santa Claus just put his arm around the little boy. And Santa Claus got a little belligerent with her. So when the mother started to pick up her baby, the man in the red suit said, "Was it worth it? Was it worth it for you to torture your child for a picture? You must be an evil person." And when the woman told the man she planned to file a complaint, he just leaped off his throne. He said, "You can't complain about me. I'm Santa Claus. I'm the best person in the world. I am good." Then she told him he ought not to be around children. Well, then he really got angry. He started to rip off his clothes. He ripped off his beard, his wig, and his coat, his belt. Some of the stunned parents covered the eyes of the children that were there. Santa was promptly led away by the security guards. Now, did that man reflect the spirit of the suit that he put on? Of course not. And what Paul is telling us here in Ephesians chapter 4, that can happen to us as well. That we've got to be careful how we behave. Because that world out there, your family out there that don't know Christ, they're watching. And they're going to see if you're different. They're going to see if Jesus really makes sense in your life. Now, if we're all honest, we've all blown it a number of times. I have too. Ever been to a sporting event and didn't like the call that the ref made? You know, people yell all kinds of things. I bet maybe some of you here yelled those kinds of things. I've been in situations sometimes where I found myself saying, "Oh, I should not do this. I need to be like Jesus." And when I'm doing those things that's not reflecting Him, it's disgracing Him.